Welcome to Midday Repartee. This is Rotten Glory, and I am joined today by Scotland's greatest shit superhero, Captain Fuckhead. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing great. I've spent the day doing manly things, chopping up pieces of wood, setting fire to things. It's been great.
I You sent that message in the DM, and I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Probably the less time you can spend on Twitter, it definitely raises the T level, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's May here, so normally this time of year we're still experiencing all the seasons, quite possibly in one day. I have seen snow, hail, rain, and bright, warm, hot sunshine all in the same day in this country, in Scotland. But today it is a perfect summer's day, so I had to go outside. Like I say, chop up some wood, build some stuff, burn some shit. It was great fun. And now I
That
smell
sounds awesome.
musky and smoky, just like a man should.
Yes. Yeah, I need more of that in my life, man. I spend way too much time in this little dark cave. It's ridiculous. Um,
It's not hard, honestly. Just do it. Just go outside, do it. Just
yeah,
yeah, just get on with
I
it.
really, and I have, where I live, I have access to we have tremendous park areas. It's a beautiful place. There's so many ways I could be taking advantage of it, and I don't. It's pathetic. Mitchell, how
Well,
you doing?
Doing good.
Good, good.
how are we, sir?
Um,
Doing good. Doing good.
So today we're going to talk about this is a topic I got into a little bit on one of Liam's streams. I don't know. This was maybe a week ago, and I felt like there was a lot more to explore with it, and that is, should comic book characters just continue on and on and on? Should they outlive their creators? Um, is this the best way? I don't know. Is it really the best way to do comic books? And yeah, I'm really curious what people think about this. Because I do know that for a lot of people, that's something they love about comics, is that these characters have such a rich history and they keep going and going and going. Um, I'm not sure I feel that way. Um, what are your initial thoughts on that, Captain Fuckhead?
In this instance, I'm going to go right back to Superman, um, and I'm going to say that, and I'm going to look at it from the film's perspective because that's where I first kind of met Superman. I've still not read a Superman comic book yet. Um, I don't think there's been any better Superman than I've just gone and forgotten his name now, like a moron, haven't I? The dude who played him in the original films. What's his name?
Oh, Christopher Reeves.
Christopher Reeve. That's the
Yeah.
puppy. Uh, and I am thankful that Superman lived on long enough that I got to see those films. I still think that all of the films, even the shit ones, are actually pretty good, and I think they're far better than what a lot of Marvel and DC are producing now. Um, so I quite like the idea of them living on past their creators' timelines, but it opens up a whole can of worms, really, doesn't it? Especially when you look at what's going on in what we call the culture war these days.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing happen to so many characters. I mean, and this is really, you know, what inspired Comicsgate in the first place. To see characters that people grew up with and love, to see them completely reformed and almost to an unrecognizable place. I just feel like it's almost inevitable if a character goes on that long. It's so far removed from the passion, from the inspiration that started the character. You're going to have people working with it that care less about the character and care more about whatever the present day whatever's going on in present day, and they want to reshape those characters into that format. And it's like, well, but doesn't that just fundamentally remove the heart and soul of the character? maybe we just need to make new characters.
I,
It's a difficult it's a really difficult topic to go into in any sort of major depth because it is so wide. It's it's got girth. Is probably the best way to put it because you could talk about this for days and still not really get anywhere.
Yeah, that's what do you think about this, Mitchell? I mean,
I think that you guys both had touched on a couple good points. What I would think is that I have no problem with them continuing. What I see them doing now is that they are taking the name of the character and kind of forgetting the archetype or personality of the character and trying to shove some another character into it that they would have been better off just making their own character for.
Hmm.
I think that that's wrong, and I think that's a big problem. But I feel like there's been a long list of characters that have kind of lived well and done well beyond their original creators' run
yeah,
when they still kind of stick true to what made that character good in the first place. It
yeah,
just kind of seems like in the moment, the name of the game is to take here's this character everyone really likes. Let's strip away everything except the name and maybe a basic visual identity and chuck it in there or logo or something and chuck in our own inserted character here that we don't want to push or create fully ourselves. And that's the problem. If we stop doing that, I think that we can continue. We can make good superhero comics. We just need to go back to the roots of the character and stay true to the character.
yeah. Well, I think I agree that it has to stay true to the roots of the character. But is there something to be said for the concept that a character is born of its time and place? And it might have a lot of its power because of that time and place. And once that time and place is moved on, once it's no longer, is it really, does the character work when it's removed from that time and place and that specific mindset of the people? I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a catch 22,
I,
because you can't really, like, if you look at the original Batman television series and then you look at an image from Dark Knight, and it's like this is two very different mindsets, two very different times and places with very different things going on. And is it possible to, over the course of 50, 60, 70 years, to have a character remain true to its roots while still being relevant to the people living in this current time and place?
I I think it is. I think that I agree that there's a lot of changes between that example of the earlier Batman and the more kind of modern day Dark Knight Batman. But we have to look at what people think that character's core concept is, and how that character normally behaves. And I feel like even though there's a lot of differences there, the core beneath the character is still there. It's kind of like how we can have a bunch of different retellings of Hercules, and we all are like, oh, we're not upset that they're remaking Hercules because Hercules is a fairly well established character. We know what he's kind of going to do, kind of what his story is about, what to kind of expect. I don't think that there was any outrage when they made the Arnold Schwarzenegger Hercules in the future movie, like way back when. Like it's you have to approach it still like you're writing that older kind of character. You have to look at it and kind of imagine like, all right, well, here's going to be Bruce Wayne. He's going to be rich. He's kind of, sad that his parents died. He's smart. He's a little bit of a detective. He's looking into things. He wants to do justice, right? So you have to kind of like look at what builds the character.
Yeah,
And if you ignore that, then of course you're going to do a horrible job, and people are going to wonder why is this guy still even being written? who
yeah,
who
yeah.
reads this?
Right. I mean, I don't know if it's official or anything, but you've got things like Wolverine possibly having, uh, a gay relationship with another character. I don't know if that's actually happened or if that was just a rumor mill kind of thing. Um, it just seems like, okay,
Yeah,
so they're trying to make it, I suppose, in their minds, make it relevant somehow, more connected to current day. And it's like, but how does that work for Wolverine? How does that?
yeah.
I can't. I don't understand it, and it's clear that people don't want it. It's not going to sell. Um, So what's the motivation?
The motivation, I think, is that they feel like there is a bigger market than the people that are actually buying their books. And so they're trying to appeal to this bigger market, or what they perceive as a bigger market, not realizing that they don't buy comic books. And you're not
Hmm.
going to you have to fight an uphill battle to get them to buy comic books. But there's this kind of gray area in the middle where I think if you don't quite go as far as they're going, maybe open it up just a tiny bit more
Mm-hmm.
in something that
Yeah.
even the comic book fans can even say, oh, probably wouldn't even really notice. They might get a comment or two, but not no one up in arms about. You can get some of these other people. You can bring some more people in. If they had tried to make their comics a little bit more like the movies, the Marvel movies, when that was going around, that could have been a great way to get stuff in. But they kind of botched that by, oh no, we're going to change this character completely. So they walk in trying to find, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in a comic book, and they see someone completely different there. Like, well, I don't want to buy that. Um,
Yeah, what that seems so mishandled, and I never understood why there wasn't a call to action in every one of those movies to buy comics. I don't recall. Of course, it's a comic book movie, but it's just like,
mhm.
even though people know that people want you to subscribe to your channel, let's say, almost everyone making videos on YouTube will at some point say, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Even though it's obvious, they would like you to do that, but you have to remind people, give a call
Yeah,
to action. And
and
why didn't they use these movies to throw down that call to action to people? I never understood that.
I think if you're talking about Marvel in that situation, it's because they don't care about the comic books. They haven't. Disney do not give a flying
yep.
Hmm.
something monkey. We'll call it a monkey. They just don't care. And I think I think to DC's credit, I think they care a little bit more. But they are letting something, because obviously you're talking about characters and being true to the characters. Well, then let's talk about Gotham Knights. If you're going to be true to Batman,
Hmm.
okay. So it was where his father married someone in Asia who had all the money. There was no real sort of Wayne Enterprises before then. Alfred's now his uncle. He's in high school with the Joker.
Right.
What the?
Yep. Right.
How does this
See,
strengthen the property? How does it connect with the
well,
character's history? It doesn't make any sense on any level to anyone.
yeah, and even the writer for that one, they did an interview and they asked her why she wanted to write Batman, and she did not have a very flattering answer. Her answer was that her husband likes Batman. I'm like, I would come up with something way better if I was a writer trying to sell a book than my husband likes Batman.
That's just bad as the guy. Who was it? The guy that did New Warriors. Is it New Warriors? And he was
Mm-hmm.
talking about one of the old characters, and he said, "No, I never read the comics because this guy intimidated me."
Yeah.
Wow, it's a comic book, man.
Well,
Absolutely absurd. That guy, so embarrassing. And I still don't. I haven't figured out if that's just a troll, or are they genuinely trying to reach out and connect with a certain cross section of people? Because I think it was pretty clear that even the direct who they were trying to connect with directly did not look at it favorably. So
mhm.
are they just that incompetent? Are they trolling us?
they're
What's happening here?
they're they're uh they're just out of contact. They're in their own little space, sitting way away from people. They look at Twitter and they see the stuff on Twitter and they think that that's reality, or they see like what people are complaining about and say this was what we have to do to get all these people, and not realizing that 1,000 likes on Twitter is not an indication of who's going to buy something.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, I do think I think with the onset of the internet and people having access to so much information as well, I think the average person sees the world. I think we see the world as a much more complicated place than maybe people did 50, 60 years ago, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because we understand that there isn't like this black and white good and evil thing, I think on a lot deeper level, we understand how complicated the politics of the world are, how things are. There's so much more to it. And if you're going to have I think superheroes back in the day, it was much more simple, and it fit in, it was more in tune with maybe people's view of the world then. But does that really work for an audience that has a much more complex view of the world now?
I think that that can work. I feel like I see that in manga that sells well, is that they still do have a type of hero, and it still is kind of like a more ideal hero. There is some more of that gray area that's kind of in the background characters or side characters or other characters, but a lot of the manga that sells will have that strong character, that like Goku character who's almost like Superman, right? He's fighting someone that they think is clearly evil, even if the evil guy ever comes around on their team eventually or whatever, it still has a kind of polar item, and it's still something that's seen.
Right.
Um, I think an interesting question to also look at on the subject would be, let's just say we stop Batman and we write another detective superhero comic. What's going to make people stop saying, "Oh, this is just a Batman remake" or whatever? At
Right.
this, like, or what say we stop making Wolverine and we just make another dude with claws who runs around smoking cigars, drinking whiskey,
Right.
right?
That's an
Like who's
interest.
gonna stop?
Yeah.
At some, like, who's gonna stop? Or if we get rid of the claws and the whiskey and the cigar, and he just runs around doing what Wolverine normally would do and acts like Wolverine, people would still say, "Oh, this is Wolverine without the claws." Like, at a certain point, like, some of these characters are just so well done and they've had long runs that if we try to make a similar character, people are going to realize that why don't we just make the Wolverine? Why don't you just do this?
That's an interesting point. I mean, so perhaps like all the archetype bases have all been covered, and anything you try to invent anew would just feel like an imitation of it. So, I mean, I can see that as a possible problem. I get that.
I think to be honest, that's probably where Marvel are at the moment, because
Yeah.
they know if they a lot of a lot of the creators that they have working for them, well, supposedly creators, uh, they know that if they let them have free reign, like you can go through Marvel and DC, almost every kind of character you can think of, every permutation's probably already been done. So the
Right.
moment that they give free reign to somebody and say, "Well, go and make your own character, do whatever you want," the editors already know that the moment that they turn around and hand the work in, their editors are already going to go, "Well, that's Batman," or "That's Wolverine." So they're already sort of self-perpetuating themselves in that way, that they have to recreate older characters, because they know there's not a lot that they can offer that would be a new character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, this was an interesting comment to me, that I kind of wanted to us to tap into maybe. I don't know about you guys, but the lore of superheroes is completely irrelevant. Boring stuff, although fresh stories are good, but still. I mean, is there a point where the superhero kind of blueprint maybe it's been played out and it's a little tired? I mean, I've heard other people say, I don't want to see another origin story. It just
yeah.
I can't handle another damn origin story,
hmm
you know.
I think that personally, I don't feel like that I want to call it like a genre um, is played out. I feel like what they've done is that they've tried a bunch of different marketing tactics to try to sell books, and they've been kind of predatory towards
Mhm.
the consumer, where it is they look at like, oh, origin stories normally sell a lot, so we're going to print a new origin story like every other year or every year just because
Yeah.
we want to sell more. You want that number one, and
Yeah.
it's the point where I don't even buy issue number ones really anymore. I'll wait to pick up like the third issue. If like the third issue, I'll go and track one down because they're probably $2 cheaper by the time the third issue comes out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
and that's kind of one of those things where I think it just goes back to the writing of it. I'd definitely look forward to reading superhero books from Comicsgate if they have when they have some more coming out. I've seen a few projects that definitely got my interest.
Yes.
And I mean, I
H-
think that we can still do it.
Hell, J Money, how you doing?
Hello.
Cool. Do you have some thoughts on this topic so far?
Well, I missed kind of the beginning of it, but I guess we're ultimately on why they do what they do in terms of the intellectual properties they have now with the origin stories and such.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like, I mean, the bigger topic of the day is, does it really work having these characters live on and on and on, this kind of infinite lifespan? Is there a point where they really ought to be retired, and put on a shelf and like, or is it possible to keep them fresh and moving forward forever?
I believe so. Um, don't well, it's the problem with what they're doing is they're taking stories that aren't even but 30 or 40 years old, and they're trying to redo them while the people that were alive then read them when they were children. So
Right.
you're just asking to piss off the people who like but that's their goal. And I was on Dan Fraga's stream. Hold on, Idris, stop. I was on Dan Fraga's stream the other day, and I was talking about Disney
Mm-hmm.
and what Disney is doing. You have two factions in Disney that are fighting for the board and control of the board, and you have people like Bob Iger and the other Bob who are the Wetworks team, and then you
Yeah.
have the family of Disney, the two granddaughters, and then all of their children, and then the people that they're married into who are literally trying to get Disney back. They're trying to get Disney back under the Disney family name with a board of directors that's controlled by the Disney Family Trust. And
Yeah.
so it is a literal battle for billions and billions of dollars and future intellectual property revenue. And
Gotcha.
so um, it's if anyone ever really wants to delve into the trust fund babies that is the Disney family, I suggest you do it. And because it's a rabbit hole, man. It definitely is a rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
that sounds fascinating. I like doing those deep dives on
Hmm.
occasion, for sure.
And
I mean,
and the two granddaughters, I'm not going to say who they're married to. You can find out on your own through Business Insider articles from like 2007 and 2009 and stuff like that. But those two girls, they're married into some very wealthy people, and so you have because the Disney Trust Fund is I think it's 20 or 30% of the company, and then because it's a private or a publicly traded company, you're able to get people who have more money than can ever be counted buy into these companies,
right.
and all that liquidity that Disney had through the early 2000s, Bob Iger and the board that he used to control, because he no longer controls it, are uh, just spent all of that money to get. It didn't matter what they were necessarily making, because if you really watch the Marvel movies, they suck.
Yeah,
They're
Hmm.
okay, and
I'd
but
agree
that
with
wasn't
that.
the goal. The goal was to buy literally every single intellectual property there is. And then you have AT&T, which is another giant trust fund from France, and they have Warner Brothers, they have DC. AT&T themselves own everything. They own railroads.
Yeah,
AT&T owns almost all the railroads, especially on the East Coast, going all the way up into Canada
yeah.
and like Georgia Pacific. It's owned by
There was
AT&T.
actually, I pulled up this video, and I just want to. Hopefully, this won't be problematic for the stream. I don't think it will. I mean, I want to promote this guy retro blasting. I don't think I'd ever watched any of this guy's videos before, but I stumbled on this one, and I'm just going to play a little bit of it. I think it's so relevant to what we're talking about, and it delves into the impact of corporate culture on, creativity. So let me just pop this up for a sec.
The corporate leader is not an innovator. They are not a creator. If they don't have something, their tactic is always the same no matter what the industry. Buy it.
How did you get the house back from the bank?
I bought the bank.
Buy another company, buy the rights to that product or service, take it and assimilate it into the corporate collective. Which brings us back around to how they could possibly paint Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who into the creative corners they sit in right now.
Leave yourself in a corner, huh? Get out of here. I don't know, I did the same thing down here.
Because corporations aren't about coming up with new ideas. Corporate culture is about exploiting old ideas created by someone else that sit in their inventory and using them until they are threadbare, then going out and buying other ideas they didn't create.
So
That's
you know,
exactly what I was just saying.
that's exactly what you're talking about, and I
Yeah,
don't
man.
think we can hail Metal Movies and Brewskis.
Yeah,
How you
man.
doing?
How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Good to have you. I think this is your first time coming on Midday Repartee. It's good to have you.
Welcome. Thank you for welcoming me. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I think the corporate mentality, the way corporations work, and the type of people at the top, and the way they do things, that I think it summed it up perfectly. And you have them buying up just ruthlessly buying up all these IPs, all these properties, and it might work for a very short period of time, but inevitably, the way the corporate mentality works, that mindset of how they run things and the type of people that they pull in to work on these IPs, they are going to destroy and bleed dry every single one of them over time. So, how do you feel about that?
Me? Well, I was that. Yeah, like there's a lot of fishers out there. They go to the cons and they're looking for IPs that they want to snatch up and whatnot, and then they want to take them back to the the big corporations and stuff. But I just wanted to talk about the creations of characters that are surpassing the lives of the creators. I think that's kind of a cool thing. Say if you're a creator and you make something cool and it sticks and people like it, it's something that's really awesome. And I think as far as like the superhero genre goes, I think that there's still room for us to expand on that. I don't think we've really hit I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. We just got to reformulate things and do things a little different, And
Yeah.
you look at the Bible. I'm just going to throw that out there. You look at Samson. He's a superhero. He had his hair. You cut that off. Boom. He's weak. You look at Hercules. You look at Thor and the Norse, and those were their comic books back then. So
Yeah.
there's always been superheroes. And I just think we just got to keep switching it up. Everything's been done already. We just have to keep tweaking it and turning it and putting a new spin on it.
Yeah,
So
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's still room for things to be done. But I think if you're talking about corporations, you also have to ask another question. What's the audience that we're talking about? Because if you look at what Disney are doing, yes, okay, they're in a bit of a battle for their own sort of identity at the moment. But what they've been doing over the past few years is films. They don't care about Marvel comics, and the people that go and watch the films is a different audience from the people that read the comic books. The comic book readers will go and watch them because they're the ones that are invested in the characters. But that's not the audience they're interested in terms of the film. They're interested in the casual people, because then they don't really care about them converting them into comic book readers. What they care about is like they've done with the Marvel movies, building a dynasty in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different phases, and getting more people through the door each time they do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
there
true.
you go. And this is that corporate way of thinking, and it actually doesn't work, and it's destructive, because in order for them to have this incredible source material to draw from, which of course they have a lot still to delve into, but eventually that's going to dry up. And if the comic book medium isn't being supported enough, if you can't make a good living creating comics, you're not going to draw the good writers. You're not going to bring in that talent. And that new source material is going to suffer and get worse and worse and worse. And then the movies will get worse and worse and worse. And it's just a downward spiral. So it's very short-sighted to me for them to not care about the comic book side of it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's their whole
Well,
plan. Their plan is the dollar today. Who cares about the dollar tomorrow? They'll buy something else new.
Well,
Exactly.
I'll interject and throw it at it from a market perspective. So when Bob Iger stepped down, or when Bob Iger was put into the news, and that they said he was stepping down, Disney's stock prices started to go down. And so what it is they all plot and scheme for the shorts. Just like one of Tesla's biggest problems is he is the most shorted company in the United States. And when you have that many shorts placed against a company, you'll start to have long-term holders start to sell their longs, or people who just hold stocks themselves, they'll sell out completely, and then the price will reach a certain point, and you got people like Berkshire Hathaway or those other fellas, they'll come in and they'll buy all of that company at its lowest point for its dead cat bounce, so to speak. And so if you know anything about, I was talking about railroads just a minute ago. If you know anything about how these contracts are made, they're made in, 9 years, 99 years, and 999-year contracts.
Mhm.
And so the railroad companies and these other corporate conglomerates that just buy everything under the sun, they base everything off of 99-year contracts the majority of the time. It's like 1995 when Bill Clinton became president. There was a renewal of that's why Glass-Steagall was removed, because it was a system. There was a law that made the banks separate their books, and then Glass-Steagall was removed, and so the banks were allowed to play with money that was in the housing market and the other hidden funds that they have elsewhere. They were able to do derivative trading that on money that they never even plan on having. And so it's the whole point. It's the oscillation of the market is their goal. And so Disney, the people who control the trust and control the board of operatives, will purposely sink their own company to a certain price point so they can do stock buybacks, or they can have their friends come in and buy stocks as well, and so they get more power. And that's kind of what the family of Disney has been doing themselves. They're now playing the game.
Right.
And they're no matter how important we think the stories is to us, it doesn't mean anything when, especially like with this COVID thing we got right here. So just this year, all the people that knew that this virus was going to do what it did, everyone planted their shorts, and everyone sold out at the top.
Yeah.
And so on a global scale, these guys made trillions. They made
Yeah.
trillions.
I have no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and you also got to remember too, if you ever heard of anybody ever heard of the Basel Bank?
No.
So Basel is they're the bank, so Basel III just was enacted this year. And so there's a new banking system. There's a new system of order that was enacted this year. So you got Basel I, Basel II. Basel II was all during World War I, World War II, and you got Basel III. And it's a new banking style. And so we are really seeing right now what it is that they do, because they've been doing it forever. You got Hess. You know what Hess is? Hess is the battery company. That's a German family. And oil, but they also AT&T owns them.
Yeah.
They own them.
Yeah.
And the goal for everyone who's in this chat, like Captain Fuckhead, because Captain Fuckhead, he creates stuff, right? Aren't you a creator?
I wouldn't call myself a creator yet, but I will
At
be.
least a flatter.
He's getting there.
Yeah, I'm at least a fatter.
Well, so what it is if you've ever heard Ethan talk, the whole reason why Ethan's doing what he's doing is so he can have a trust fund set up for his children, so they're paid, and
Legacy,
they'll have
right.
intellectual property, and all the residuals that are made off of that will go to his family. But you have a lot of people who are in these corporate entities that are a part of a system, a part of a society, that they got huge off of the backs of the corporations that their families and forefathers were a part of. So when they die, no matter what, their trust goes back to a corporation. It doesn't get to stay in a family. It goes to the people who made you. And if your family, say for example, if you're a Crusader family, those families have more wealth now than they did when they did all 7 to 9 crusades. And they run Hess, man.
Right.
They run IG Farben, Total SA. They
And that's
so
what I'm saying. It's like, I think this touches back on, the world has probably more or less always, to some extent or another, been this way, but it wasn't necessarily something that the average person knew about or could tap into. So the world is a much more complicated, even if in reality it isn't. It's just the average person is more aware that all of these dealings, the way the world works, we have much more access to that information today. And it's like, I think we need our superheroes to be a little bit more complicated as well, to approach the world in this more complex way, rather than like, oh, somebody's getting mugged, I need to save them. Like, maybe the superheroes need to be like, bigger picture.
I don't know. I think that sometimes having that simpler approach, that ideal approach, going into a convoluted issue, like maybe you don't need to make the superhero the one who's conflicted internally with the kind of like the one who's the big picture. Maybe we could put the ideal superhero into the big picture and see how this ideal figure is supposed to react to this strange environment that is going on around him, where things aren't always black and white. Well, do I really want to help this guy? This guy's not that good, but stopping the other guy might not be that good either.
Right.
See what they do and how they come to terms with it.
Yeah.
That's true.
So all these small creators need to do what they can to make their IP go to their family, and then their family go to their family.
Absolutely, man. That's I think that's one of my favorite components of indie comics in general, but certainly Comicsgate, is that I really like the idea of not only getting great comics, but investing into a creator like that, and giving them the ability to do that for their family, for themselves. They're not just getting a paycheck from a corporate entity. They're building their own legacy. And I like investing into that as a fan, for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
So,
that J
like,
Money's
would you guys want to see, just as an example of this topic, like, is Cyberfrog something that should always continue on, even when Ethan isn't there to write the character?
I think so.
Should that be passed on to the next person?
Yeah, and there's a wealth of different, who knows what happens with technology and the way the world turns, and there's a million different stories that could spiral out of that, with him being a futuristic character as it is. There's a lot you could do with that, but you could do that with any type of character, really. Anybody can write any type of story, and any character can beat any character up, probably, if you write it the certain way, like, for example, Superman could destroy Thor in one story, and then another story Thor can destroy Superman. Superman gets taken down with magic, I guess, and Thor has his weaknesses too. But yeah, to answer your question, I definitely think that it could continue on to his legacy, and the Cyberfrog can continue on into the future, definitely.
Okay.
So you say the word legacy there, which is I think that's really poignant, because I think that if a character, and it's a big if, but if a character lives on past the creator, then that's not the character itself has to be good to start with. But I think, in my mind, that's not the legacy of the character, that's the legacy of the creator. And I think with a conversation like this, it's always going to come back to should the character, who should be writing the character once it's lived past the creator.
Yeah.
And I think
that's a trust setup.
Yeah, it's always going to be that problem. So even if Ethan's kid knew Cyberfrog inside out and wanted to write Cyberfrog after Ethan was here, would Ethan be happy with that? You don't know.
Yeah.
So you've got to ask that question. First of all, who the audience is, and who are we going to let write these characters?
Like you could throw in there Stoker, and you can also throw in there Bram Stoker had, I think, his great grandson finished. He wrote a sequel to Dracula, and then that Dracula becomes I think a director of like a house, theater house in London, and I think Madame Bathory's in there, and he left that for him. And then you could throw in there Tolkien. I believe Tolkien's son finished the Silmarillion, and those were both probably set up in the trusts. So if they were to pass, then the family member could continue writing the characters, because they would probably theoretically maybe know the characters more than some other people.
Even in the situation with Marvel and DC now, and I mentioned Gotham Knights earlier on, but that's that Gotham Knights has just taken Batman and just tipped it on its head and gone, I don't give a shit about all the 80 years of fucking history. He was a detective, and then he was a hard nut in the Dark Knight series. They've just completely wiped all of that legacy out. But so the question for me then would be, who is it in DC that is allowing this to happen? Because somebody in DC should be responsible for keeping those legacies alive. Surely.
Right.
Well, just to let you know, Batman and Superman will be public properties soon, and so one of the main reasons why DC Entertainment had so many problems with making the Superman movies was because the person who owns Superman now doesn't want his version of Superman in DC/Warner Brothers movies. So, and that's the reason why the Zack Snyderverse has such an interesting looking Superman, because they're actually not allowed to use the curl. They're not allowed to use the red underwear. There's a certain, and the S had to be different. So it's just like, I think in the next year or two, Popeye is going to be public property.
Love Popeye, man.
So just like anybody can make a Thor book, because that
public
intellectual property is so old, it's public. So anyone can make a Thor or Beowulf story.
Yeah, Dracula.
So soon, Dracula, even though I think it'll be sooner than Superman, and so these people are making their own. I'm going to digress a little bit. These companies aren't American ran. They may be in America, but they're not American. It's just like AMC, the AMC movie theater.
Yeah.
So granted, Silver Lake owns 33.3% of the company. There was a Chinese conglomerate that actually owns 66.6% of the company until just a few years ago. And and here in the United States and Canada, Tyson Foods and Smith Foods, they're actually owned by Chinese firms. And so you have Chinese firms closing down meat producing factories here in the United States. And why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that the same reason why they're destroying American entertainment. They try to destroy the NFL. They try to destroy baseball when Sammy Sosa and all those guys are going through their steroid stunt. And then they try to do it to basketball, but basketball was a little bit more resilient. But they really crushed the amount of money that could have been made. And then on top of that, you have, like, when the new New York Stadium was made, that was made with completely funded by New York City. And so even though you have Americans who own New York Yankees, you actually have foreign operatives, just make it simple, that actually control the New York Stadium, even though it was made with New York taxpayers' money, tax-free. And then for the next X amount of years, that stadium pays no taxes because of the deals that they were made. And so if they're doing it to baseball, they're doing it to basketball, they're going to come for our entertainment. They're going to buy out all of our movie theater companies. They're going to make sodas $10. They're going to make popcorn $8. They're going to keep doing this really egregious nonsense. And then at the same time, you have European families and mafia that own our entertainment industry, who like the Weinsteins. Those dudes are mafia. And then the reason why they were able to do what they did is because they blackmailed everyone and then they got all these corrupt individuals to stand behind them while they made shitty movies. And then you see it trickling into us specifically. You see it trickling into our entertainment, which is comics. And so they were a bunch of white guys that love stuff. No racism there, but they like to interject it. They want to throw gay couples kissing in Star Wars, but they'll take it out of China, which owns some portions of Disney and Lucasfilm. So you got strong-handed, strong-armed foreigners who actually have a huge invested interest in the destruction of our entertainment. Plus, they also own. In these corporate businesses, you only need 3 to 10% of a business to kind of cause problems.
Sure.
And then
Yeah,
you got,
I can understand that. So
and
do
you
you
got
think,
you got Ted Cruz, and you got the other guy. I forget what country. I don't mean to keep rambling, but you got a couple guys in our Congress now who are trying to make it harder or illegal for foreign investment firms, vulture capitalists, to actually invest in our industries, be it food, entertainment, or our health supplies. And I thoroughly enjoy what's going on, even though everything's getting destroyed. We're literally seeing a reshuffling of corporate structure. And if you look at it in the last year and 4 months, there's been over 3,000 CEOs resign. Why is that?
That's
You know,
insane. Right. Well, that's, I'm fascinated by that stuff. And I, in a weird way, it does connect with what we're talking about. And, that is something we have to realize that if you're just looking
infiltration.
at it from, I want good comics and I want good stories, obviously when it comes to corporate dealings and how the show is being run, there are a lot of other things going on there behind the scenes.
Yeah.
A lot of which we will never be privy to.
Literal wars.
Probably, it is going to be up to groups like Comicsgate and independent creators to, to kind of rebirth comic books and to get back the trust and readership that has been lost and destroyed. These they're not going to do it. I don't think they're going to. I just think that we shouldn't be trusting corporations to produce this kind of art medium anyway. Fuck them.
Yeah.
They don't think like imagine like we do. You know what I mean? We're the ones that are going to come up with these cool characters and stories and concepts, and they're not in that spectrum, and they're not ever really going to be, I don't think.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I generally don't believe Warner Brothers and Marvel, Disney are interested in the comic books at all. They've got no. The only reason why they keep them about is because they have to. There's a thing there.
Yeah.
There's a legacy of 80 years. They can't just go throw it in the bin. But I think, and I honestly believe they are trying to, like you were saying, Jay. I think they are trying to systematically destroy the comic book industry. I think there is an issue there. I don't think it's just these creators that they've brought in that are doing it. I think that they're doing it on purpose. But I think long term for me, what's likely to happen, you'll see companies like Disney and Warner Brothers. They will deal exclusively in film. They won't bother with comic books. You'll see. I've got a funny feeling you're going to see a lot of big publishers, novel literature publishers, go out of business fairly soon as well, and you'll end up having comics, novels, anything that we can make. We have access to that technology that we can make. So we've got printers. We know we can use Mixam. They're already become CG standard. There's plenty of other printers that you can go to print any type of literature you want. So that kind of stuff is going to fall to the everyday people. It's not going to be done by big companies anymore because there's not going to be enough money in it. You look at some of the and to touch on Jay's point there about foreigners, you're all foreigners to me. So in the UK we have like you do, we have big supermarkets which they don't tend to have in Europe very much, and they certainly don't have them in Asia too much either. But what they do now with books and kids books and comic books, not the ones that we we're into. I'm talking about like Star Wars, Lego comic books, and that sort of stuff. There's all supermarkets now. They have a small section, and they'll sell books for £3, 3 or 4 quid. You might get 4 for a tenner. And if you think a novel like any novel like that is probably what 60 to 80 to 120,000 words.
Right.
So somebody's put a hell of a lot of time into writing that. The publishers are then putting time into publishing it and printing it, and then they're selling it for £3. How much of that £3 is the author getting?
It's true.
Next
Not
to
much,
nothing.
probably.
Next to
Yeah.
nothing. They're getting paid pence per book. At some point, and it's going to happen very soon because comics is leading the way in that. At some point, some big author is going to go, you know what? Fuck this for Game of Soldiers. I can do this myself. I
Yep.
know the printer. I can go on the internet. Comicsgate has shown me how to market my stuff. I can raise the money myself using Indiegogo or Kickstarter. I don't care what you use, just use it. And as soon as one major author does that, that's going to change everything.
Yeah, it's going to be a turning point. There was something too
I
that
think
Spurg was
it's
saying.
already happened. I feel like we're watching that drift closer and closer to being more of a norm. I think that EVS kind of was that turning point when he started to get campaigns up over 1 million. Like Wreck Planet's already over 700,000.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, I think we have that turning point. I think now we're letting it sink in to these other creators. Like, oh, and another comment I heard him say, or I think it was EVS mentioned before, was that some of these creators aren't leaving where they are just because they know that if they do, they're not going to get another writing job or another job inside the comic book industry because they haven't been moving the product.
yeah.
So they're just kind of sitting there.
Spurger was saying too. I'd like to point out he was talking about how like somebody could do Thor, but they can't use the appearance that Marvel is using. You know, it's also the same thing. Say like I believe Frankenstein's public domain right now, so any of us could go do a Frankenstein story right now, but we can't give him a square head. We can't give him the clamps on the forehead, and we can't give him the bolts in the neck. We can do a bunch of stuff. Otherwise, the universe will come.
Sorry, there is a Frankenstein story in Comicsgate.
Yeah, Doc Frankenstein.
Yep.
Yeah, I back that. I
Salem,
can't wait.
yeah.
Or Doc Salem. Yeah.
Yeah, I backed that book. It looks really fun. It looks.
Yeah, I'm
the
pumped,
art's
man.
Great. Yeah, that looks like a great project.
Yeah.
If any of you just bring up Thor as well, there's a guy I listen to on YouTube. He just sort of 10-minute videos. I can't remember. Bjorn Johnson, I think Bjorn Johansson, I think his name is. He's from Norway. He's a proper Viking. And he does a lot of videos. He basically goes into the woods, chops up, like I like to do, chop up wood and set fire to shit. And he does all that. He films his videos out while he's in the woods doing his stuff. But a lot of his videos talk about culture war and things like that. And I watched one a while ago, and he was actually talking about Thor and making Thor female. And he basically
I remember that.
said,
Yeah, I seen.
he said, "Fuck it, I don't care. Do what you fucking want because Thor's not female. The stories that need to be passed down through generation by generation will still be passed down. Do what you want. In 10 years' time, no one will remember that film anyway."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. They can read the sagas and know about it, you know, and it's crazy how much that has been part of it's been around forever. Like Thor's Day, a lot of people know is Thursday, and Wednesday is Woden's Day, and it's crazy.
Everyone should follow Survive the Jive. Everyone.
So to answer the topic at hand, will these heroes live on past, or should they live on past the creators? For me, yes.
Yep.
Because if you look at what's happening technologically within the publishing industry, and if you look at what creators are doing, Thor's been around for thousands of fucking years.
Yeah. Look at Walter Simonson's Ragnarok. I don't know if you guys read that, but that's like my favorite mainstream book. He did Simonson did Thor forever, and then he decided to go and do his own spin on it, where he's a Viking Thor zombie, and he's going around, and it's after the Viking apocalypse, and all the 9 realms merged into one realm. And Thor's trying to figure out what the fuck's going on, and he's going around, and he got a chance to do it, and he reinvented it. And you know what I mean? He's
really
getting
cool.
to do that same character.
Yeah.
He's not Comicsgate, but still, it kind of affects with legacy and being able to use certain characters and people creating legacy characters getting a second crack at them.
Yeah.
I've got to say I'm a little bit torn on the topic at hand, because there's a part of me, as a writer, there's a part of me that's like, so much of what a character is, it's because of the writer, the creator of that character, and the writer of that character, the initial person that gives birth to it. So much of who they are and what they are is put into that creation.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me to think that once that person is no longer involved, that over time, it's just inevitable that over time, the character is just going to become more and more watered down, more and more generic. It's going to lose those little nuances and things that made it special to begin with. And so that part of me is like, I'm not sure that this actually works. But
Right.
then, I love Batman. I love
Dark
a
Knight
lot of
Returns.
these characters that I love, and it's like,
Yeah.
I do get that there's some excitement to, like, when there's a talent, there's somebody with a lot of talent to tell stories. What will they do with this iconic thing? I get that excitement as well. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I'm kind
Oh, you're
of
right.
torn on it.
You're right. I mean, look at Batman. When Finger and Kane, when they created it, which was a Leonardo da Vinci inspiration at some points. He had the guns and he went around, and then later on Batman became a martial artist, and and they put that aspect in there. He didn't use guns no more, and he used ninja stars, and then you threw in the whole Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns. He came in and just took that character, he aged him, he made him weathered and stronger and more knowledgeable, and they took another crack at it, and Finger and Kane really weren't touching it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like Captain Fuckhead, I think, said at the beginning. This is something we could talk about round and round and round, and we're probably going to wind up exactly where we started.
Yep.
I guess we did a little bit, but a lot of interest. We had J
But it's
Money
cool.
like dropping some hardcore,
J Money, you got a show or
conspiracy
what?
on us.
You got a show, J Money? A YouTube channel?
No,
You
but
should.
I got a.
You should, man. You
I
got a lot
know.
of valid points, and I think people would watch your show. I'd check it out. Yeah.
I got a small chat. I used to be in this investment chat, and it's me, my buddy Colin, who lives in Saskatchewan, and my buddy Aaron, who's actually South Korean, born in America but lives in Portugal, and he is a musician. He does like I don't know instruments, but anyway, he writes music and does all that. And bro, I love history, man, and
Yeah.
I love corporate espionage, and I dig deep in the corporate espionage because that's all this stuff really is, and it's a way to make money, and these people have been making money for a very long time.
These
Yeah.
families.
And
So do
Yeah.
you think it always comes back to just making money, or are there deeper,
yeah,
larger
so
motivations
you
here?
know what a trust fund is, right?
Yeah, of course.
So do you know what the first trust fund ever created was? So the first
I don't.
trust fund that was ever created was created by the Vatican, by the Holy See. It was called the Trust. And you can try and Google it, but you ain't gonna find it. And you got to type in certain long tail keywords to get what you want to get.
Yeah.
But these palpable families, palpable nobility or black nobility, whatever you want to call them, palpable families. So I'll give you one example. There's a certain family in Italy. Not only do they own some of the most prestigious properties in Italy, but in their family, they've had 3 or 4 popes, and they've had 8 or 9 bishops. And these were all going down during the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, the Kingdom of Italy, when the Nationals, which is what happened before Nazi Germany, because Nazi is just nationalist. And
Yeah.
so that actually originated in Italy. And so when you had the Pope, anytime a Pope locks himself inside of the Vatican City, it's planning time. And so you have certain Crusader families that still exist today. And then you have certain palpable nobility families that still exist today. Am I still here? Because my screen just loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
I started talking about certain things again. I got kicked off of Dan Frager's stream the other day.
Right.
So what it is you in all these families. So trust funds are the most powerful things in the world. The United States of America is actually a giant trust fund. It's a giant trust,
Right.
and people tried to infiltrate us and take that trust away because the United States isn't even only It's not even 300 years old, and you got families that are thousands of years old. So I mean,
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
and
I'm
so
sure Captain
you
Fuckhead.
have one Italian family that has some of the most prestigious bishops that have ever lived, and that lived during certain times from the 1870s to now, specifically when the Austro-Hungarian royal court got moved from Austria and got put into London. And Prince Charles runs the royal court now. And this one Italian family owns almost 100% of the telecommunications that happens in Italy.
Mm.
So, and
Ah.
if you take if you take Italy's size versus the United States size, and you can see that you can fit like 30 Italys inside the United States, it's very simple to see how one family can control almost all of the telecommunications that's in Italy, because it's a tiny ass state. It's tiny,
Right.
but
Right.
they're super powerful because they got money out the asshole, and they have so much money that it's truly uncountable, and that's why it's so easy for them to do what they do. And if you look at Italy and you look at all that they don't have the replicas of the marble statues from when Rome was the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. They have the actual statues. So you're
Right.
messing with people who have statues that are worth more than some small countries. So I mean, so the only and that's why Ethan, John Malin, and all these guys get so much pushback, is because they are creating their own entity that no one can control what they create, no one can control what they say, and they're
Yes.
actually pushing back against the global conglomerate
Yeah.
that is what it is. So has anyone ever heard of the phrase Gog and Magog?
It does ring a bell. I
So
have to
so
say,
that's
it's
so so that's from the steppe, the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, where Crimea is, and the Tartars and everything. But back in the day, Indo-Europe, which is actually the Aryan nation, that was called the unclean nations, the undignified nations. What is the United Nations called today? It's the UN. They're still the unclean, undignified nations. And that's why the Western
oh
Roman
man.
Empire, remember, it just fell just fucking 1,000 years ago.
Right.
And you have the same families, the same Northern Prussian, Northern German families that controlled all of the trade routes and the river routes, that still have money today, and they're the people who own TESS
Yeah.
and Boston Pacific, AT&T, and the Fed. So you have
Yeah.
Western Roman Empire family that own almost all of corporate America,
I think this is
and it's very simple.
part of the
It's very
reason
simple.
I really do have so much respect for EVS and his commitment to staying with, Comicsgate. Um, because he does understand. I think he does have a very strong understanding of the bigger culture war at hand and the importance of what, giving, taking that creative spirit away from the corporations, not selling that. Let's not give that to them anymore. They've got all that money, but they can't create anything. They've proven this over and over and over. Their mentality, those people, they don't have the ability to birth these things into the world. They still need the creatives to do that. Let's just not give it to them.
Right.
They're
Let's build it
crusaders. They're
ourselves,
crusaders.
and I think EVS gets that.
Yeah, and there's two types of people in this world, man. There's givers and there's takers, and I think that creators and artists, they're givers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's why it's so painful. And I think who just said it? Hold on. Ted Lehman said, "Old money hates new money." Bro, that is the most truest statement there could be. And their goal. Think about it. So the United States is really 50 countries, 50 small countries that combine to create the United States of America. imagine the tax revenue because of how sophisticated the United States is. Imagine the tax revenue that the United States makes. And then
Right.
you take a photo of France, or you take the size landmass of France. You can literally have 8 or 9 Frances fit inside of the United States, not including Alaska. You can have like 2 or 3 Frances fit inside.
Oh,
These
we're
people
losing you a bit. You're roboting.
funneling so much money. Oh, okay. I'm saying the wrong things.
Yeah, maybe that's possible. I
thing
don't
is,
put that.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
put
saying
that
the wrong
past
things.
YouTube.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
so once I start glitching, I should calm down.
You say all
Yeah,
this,
so
Jay.
old money hits new money, and so history is one of the greatest things in the world, because what we are experiencing now is new history, and I will be blown away if something actually changes and the old world order is in shambles.
Yeah.
Now, you're not going to take away their money, you're not going to take away the corruption, but you
Right.
can end the trafficking of people, drugs, and weapon, so much so that you can actually, that's like, I mean, so the whole reason why this entire COVID thing happened the way that it did is because Trump started slashing all the slush funds. So if they spend more money than they make, how do they get money back? Well, they will literally halt the entire world to get the money that they lost.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. So Trump specifically himself has cut off the ability to continuously use slush funds to take money out of this country and to put into literally specific individuals' bank accounts. And then who are those people who have those bank accounts? And where does that money go? It's
Yeah.
play money, man. And
Yeah.
so
You
they'll
say
shut
it-
down the whole world. They'll start a war to get their money.
You say all this, Jay, but I live in the one country that the Roman Empire built a fucking wall to keep us out. And I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing a house older than your fucking country.
Yeah. I was gonna say that
Yeah,
earlier.
exactly. Yeah,
Captain
Hadrian's
Fuckhead,
Wall. So Hadrian's Wall. So do you know the Roman? Do you know what Mithraean? Do you know what Mithra is?
Not off the top of my head. I did delve into
So-
all of this stuff years ago.
So Hadrian's Wall was made. So all of Roman soldiers were Mithrans, and Mithrans are cave worshippers, and they had the Ferengi cap, and so they are the aristocrats. They are the boatsmen. They are the tradesmen. The reason why you had that Hadrian. I'm Scottish. I mean, I can show you my ancestry, bro. My family were Norman conquerors that had sex with Kent, Wessex, and Essex families, and my family lived in England for over 1,000 years before they came here in the 16 and 1700s. And so I feel you, but you're I'm not trying to cuss, but you're fucking with aristocratic families that held all of Britannia, all of Northumbria, all of Wessex, Essex, Kent, Domania, and all those other areas, all because of the tin mines that are in England, all because of the sheep and the cattle and the fertile lands. The same damn people.
Yep.
Same damn people, man.
Yep.
Same damn people.
You go through Scottish history, and every time shit goes wrong, it's because the nobleman sold the country out. Period. It's always about the money.
Yeah. And
Damn,
it's them
dude.
Cistercians, it's them
Yeah,
Templar.
I think
them
people are wanting
Benedictine.
are kind of like, hey man, Jay Money, you should probably get your own channel going and talk about this stuff.
Fuck
you
yeah.
know?
That's what I was saying. He's got a lot of talk about, and I think he could get a pretty good fan base. People would listen to
Absolutely,
you.
man. There are a lot of people very interested in all those topics, everything you're talking about, for sure.
Well, like I said, man, survive if you history with Hilbert, but mainly Survive the Jive. Survive the Jive he's fantastic, man. and that's his YouTube channel. That's what it's called. His name
Okay.
is Tom Roswell,
All right.
and it's Survive the Jive at Normal Spelling. And it goes over haplogroups, trade route groups, goes all the way to the steppe. Because remember in the steppe, so Captain Fuckhead, he's Scottish. His ancestry is from Anatolia. It's from Asia Minor. There was redheads and blonde, blue-eyed people that were all over the steppe in the Caspian Sea forever.
Mhm.
And the Romans literally pushed everyone so far over that they ended up. So you had the bell beaker culture, you had the battle axe culture, and you had the other cultures that from the corded ware. So you had the corded ware culture all the way to the bell beaker and battle axe culture, and that's Normandy, Sweden, Denmark, Jutland, and all that. And you had the bell beaker culture, which is essentially Western Europe. And so all these, imagine how many redheaded people used to live back then. They all got slaughtered. They all got slaughtered, all for their salt, all for their gold, all for their trade routes of the rivers. And they're still doing it today. And if anyone has any idea or even wants to push back against it, they don't know what they're talking about. And these same goddamn families, like the La Rochon family, I always have I'm a copy and paste. If you want to know a damn family to look into, because you had the Duchy of Kromlov, the House of Frutzenberg, the House of Schwarzenberg, the War of the Six Coalitions, the priesthood of Kelbelk, which is a Jewish thing, and I don't want to talk about that stuff on the internet. Where is
Probably
he at?
lies.
But yeah. So the people who started Mohammedanism or Arab religion, those families, because remember, after Muhammad died, there was a coup, and that coup was between the great grandson of Muhammad or his great nephew, and then you had the family that was the protector of Muhammad himself, because Muhammad, all he was a tradesman. His family had control of Arabia's trade routes from the peninsula over. So I'm digging way too much, and I don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think we gotta
I'll
get
stop
this.
myself. I'll stop myself.
Yeah.
No,
Jay-
I
Jay-
think everybody really appreciated some of the insights there, and like I said, in a weird way, it all connects. And that's what, the world is a very complex network of things going on. We're hyper focused on this little comic book section of it, and but the larger world has an impact on what's happening, even with something like comic books. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels to me like
But
Jay Money is like the Donnie Darko of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite thing is research. So I love haplogroups, trade routes, and like all of the Bible is about salt, the trade routes between Egypt and Antioch/Anatolia, and the ports that connected to the trade routes that allowed trades in goods, textiles, and commodities to get into Syria on over to India and all those locations. That's not what they were called then. That's all the damn Bible is about. It's about, and wine. Jesus, his family was heavily into wine.
Never,
And
never, ever forget the booze.
yeah,
That's right.
It's always wine, salt, and spices. Like Maccabees, wine, salt, and spices, and the trade
Salty
route
wine.
in between. Yeah, man. And because by then, at that point, they hadn't found those salt mines in Switzerland yet, in Hattusa or whatever that area was specifically, that those the Vikings had control over the salts for Europe. And but I just posted a Crusader family, the De La Rochefoucauld. I can't pronounce it correctly, but that Crusader family is alive and well, and they're the Gouds, Gould. And they are the ones who helped create the United States and turn the 13 colonies into a country. And then you have but they're all
Nice.
Cistercians and Benedictines. And if because everyone's always tricked to believe that, oh, it's the Knights Templars, the Knights Templars. While they are the bankers, yes, they are the bankers for the Holy See. You have Cistercians, and Cistercians were monks with swords, and they were the ones who ran the priories. And so if you watch that silly dumb movie with Tom Hanks about the priories, what was that one? Tom Hanks in the church.
I don't know.
Da Vinci
I don't
Code.
really like that.
You mean that?
Da Vinci Code, right?
Da Vinci Code.
Is that
So
what?
that
Yeah,
was-
I couldn't even watch. I couldn't even watch it. I couldn't stomach it. It was so
it's a
lame.
bastardization of history, and then
Yeah.
when it's and man, dude, these motherfuckers, they're still around, dude, and they are destroying our entertainment on purpose. And then they'll set it back up so it makes money again, and then they'll wait for the next fall, and they'll short the market and they'll make money again, and it'll oscillate, and it will forever
believe
do
it.
that. The people who run and own the railroad tracks, baby.
Fascinating, dude. I mean,
It's
I could
always a
not have,
railroad.
if you had told me where the course this show would take, and there's no way I would have believed it. Yeah, that's fascinating shit.
Yeah.
I have a commitment here coming up shortly. And I am trying to keep these shows to about an hour, just, keep it reined in, have a nice little conversation every day. And it looks like Combi Mark was wanting to pop in here, but I really gotta cut this thing off. Here, let's just let him sell his book
Bring him
for a
in.
second. Let's let him sell his book for a second.
My YouTube boyfriend.
Greetings, comrades. It's me, Combi Mark. Hello.
How's it going, man?
You're not
just been
sounding
listening-
too good.
Is that better? I've just been listening to Jay Money talking for ages. He sounds just like me, talking about the way that the capitalists rule everything, and they always have. And I was actually just popping in to say, make sure you come and watch CG UK in an hour or so, hour and
Yes.
40 minutes. Like,
Yes.
we'll be live in it.
You didn't
Come on
trust
down.
me to plug it then, did you not?
I had to Google what were you calling it earlier? Pink what?
The pink pound. Look,
The pink pound?
yeah,
That's
because
the money
pound,
that gay people make in the United Kingdom?
yeah, because obviously we use pounds in it, like, and that's a phrase that they use, like, in board meetings or whatever, like the pink pound.
Yes.
Like, because the gay people have a higher disposable income because they don't have children traditionally, and they have two like man-paying jobs, so they get the full wages, and they don't have children. So, yeah,
Is the CG UK thing, is that on your channel, Coming Mark?
it is on my channel. It's on my channel for the foreseeable future.
Okay, cool. And I'm assuming Captain Fuckhead, you'll be over there.
I will be later on tonight. We're relying on Mandy to entertain us. Miss Summers this evening.
Ah, okay. That should be fun. So everybody, head over to Kami Mark's channel in about an hour. That's going to be a good time. I want to thank Mitchell, Jay Money, and Metal Movies and Brewskis for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And, of course, thank you to Captain Puckhead, my co-host today.
My pleasure, Rob.
All right. And we will see you tomorrow.
See ya.
Peace.
See you later.